Hello, everyone. How are you? Gonna crack open a Diet Coke to talk about Dynamite. Guys, I feel bad. I feel really bad because I really, 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 really dislike this show. And hey, I've already seen some people in the chat saying they liked it. And that's great. But we always like to discuss things here freely and openly. And for me, I thought this was a wretched edition of television. That's how I've been describing it to people, absolutely wretched. So we're going to go through the show. Some things I'll have more to say about than other things. Probably the stuff that was bad. I think we'll put some stuff together. I'll tell you right now, we're going to start with everything to do with Moxley and his gang. Then I think I'll just move on to the Briscoe Jericho stuff because that made me really angry too. And then I'll go through whatever else I missed. A man shaved his fucking head on this show. And that's not even a major talking point. I thought this show was really bad. I thought it was really badly written. It really, there was a lot of red flags creatively. There's a lot of storylines where the thought hasn't been put in, the care hasn't been put in. I feel like people working on different stuff aren't actually talking to each other. I just found it to be a very bad edition of television that just highlighted why I think even though Jon Moxley, he's doing a great little job, he's doing some great little acting, that this storyline doesn't really work. And I'm not sure these storylines ever actually do work and probably shouldn't be done. And I have to wonder, when we think about this storyline and how it came about, this is from Jon Moxley's brain. And Moxley, he had a bit of a hiatus after Forbidden Door, I think it was, where it was kind of put out there that he wasn't very happy with AEW, the direction of AEW, all that sort of stuff, like the kind of things that his character is saying, right? That was kind of put out there. And he's concocted this storyline, which he's very good at playing the character. The other players, Pac, Claudio, Wheeler, especially Marina, playing their parts really well. But the storyline he's conducted himself is the company went in a bad direction, so I'm going to do a hostile takeover and be champion. And I just wonder how this would come off if anyone else had that idea, or how the feeling would be towards it. So anyway, the show opened up with one of John's video packages, one of his little mission statement packages. This was good, as they all are. But my God, the audio was fucking awful. I couldn't hear a word he was saying when the music was playing. I could only hear him at the end when the music stopped. And this is just another one of those constant, AEW production problems, which there are always, there's always been these problems, whether it's with, the direction, the sound, whatever. And it seems that you're constantly being told, or I'm constantly being told, whether on the record or off the record, that this certain problem is being taken care of. We've hired this guy to take care of this problem. We're looking into this problem. We're sorting this problem. And they never get sorted. They never get sorted. We still have things missed by the director, and they hired a new person to do that. We still have backstage segments that have terrible sound. And then we have stuff like this video package, which someone just needed to watch this before it aired to say, hey, I think maybe the music's too loud when John's talking. And then later in the show, we have a video package where they're advertising upcoming events. Like they're actually doing the thing people want them to do and advertising their upcoming events to the people that are watching their show. But the music's too loud on that too, and you can't hear it. So just another little, AEW problem that just 5 years in, we're still dealing with these on a weekly basis. If it wasn't this, we would have a missed camera shot or something. It's just like, guys, like, come on. So we have that. And then we cut to outside where there's a welcoming committee for Jon Moxley. Wow, it is a motley crew indeed. And I don't mean girls, girls, girls. I mean jobbers, jobbers, jobbers. So we have the Top Flight are out there, Private Party, Action Andretti, Jeff Jarrett, Jay Lethal, Satnam Singh, the Butcher, who I spent the whole show going, who's that guy? And then I realized it was the Butcher. We have the Dark Order. John Silver has nunchucks. And John Silver is incapable of being serious. He doesn't look like a serious person, nor is he able to act like a serious person. So having him in your front line is really bad. Having someone like Satnam Singh there, who is so tall, but is just I just wouldn't have hired him because he isn't very good and is just tall, and he's so quickly just been put in this role where he's almost Kurgan-esque, Okay, Fernando in the chat says, why was Karen Jarrett there? I was thinking the exact same thing, Fernando, because these guys are waiting on Jon Moxley, the man that suffocates people with plastic bags. And Jeff Jarrett has Karen there. Like you would bring your wife to this or let your wife come to this. Your wife who isn't a wrestler, when it's not as if, well, she's not going to get beat up because she's a woman. No, Marina will kick her ass, right? Why? Just the very fact of her being there, and you guys know I love Karen Jarrett. She is a goddess. Her being there just added to the idea that it was just these throwing together little mascot people. Gosh, just seeing John Silver with those nunchucks immediately just awful. You had Orange Cassidy, who at the beginning was hanging at the back. Now he's one of the guys that we're waiting on to step forward, right? We'll get to more of that later. Daniel Garcia is there in the front. I'll have more to say on that later, along with Private Party. But the most central person was Mark Briscoe. And Mark Briscoe is actually the most intimidating looking person out of all these guys. But Mark Briscoe is front and center. And yet he's going to be in a match later with Jericho, who doesn't exist with this Moxley stuff. So they're very much, and I know this is week 3 or whatever, but these guys coming as the front line just show how unserious Moxley's threat must be, that only these guys care. But Moxley killed Bryan Danielson, but no one's even mentioning this, because maybe if you mention that Moxley did this to Bryan Danielson, it would seem more like the bigger names should care because they should have respect for Danielson, but no one fucking cares. So as I said, I'm just going to go through the Moxley stuff. So they're still in the parking lot. Spoiler alert, these idiots will be in the parking lot all night. It will get dark, it will get cold, and they're still standing there. So Chuck Taylor, who is now an agent, he walks up and he tells the conglomeration guys that Mark Briscoe's match is next. And then he does like exposition on him and Orange Cassidy. He's like, I think this would be a very convenient time to remind the viewers at home that we used to live together until AEW started. You know, it's like, hey, Orange, I want to tell you that we have this history. We must have a really strong bond. Wouldn't you be sad if something happened to me, Orange? And the 500,000 people watching at home? Okay, so they walk off. They've now left the front line. Okay. For what reason? We'll find out in a bit. Then we go. Okay, so then it goes dark, right? It's dark and we see the front line again. A car arrives. Everyone's like waiting. And Christian gets out. And they're just like, oh, you're like the comedy heel. We're not waiting for you. So our main event is Daniel Garcia and Private Party against Jack Perry, Matthew, and Nicholas Jackson, the Elite, minus Okada, who didn't want to go to Utah, I guess. So Private Party win this match. And they want another shot at the Bucks. And they tell the Bucks that they've earned it. And Zay has an offer. If Private Party loses this rematch, they'll split up as a team for good. Now, Mark Quinn is like, really? And the Bucks accepted that. So I actually don't know which way this will go because we've seen the Private Party guys be courted by MVP and by Stokely. I think there's a chance they break up, but also I think there's a chance that they win the titles. So the Elite, we still don't know what their connection, if any, is to the Moxley crew gang. Still thinking about Motley Crue. So then we have the BCC truck arriving at the arena. This is our climax of the show. But psych, it's just Marina, which is pretty scary because Marina is like a million times the badass of everyone left waiting in the parking lot. Is she not? You know, like she could murder John Silver with her bare hands and freaking Evil Uno and Action Andretti. So we have Pac, Claudio, and Wheeler Yuta attacking Daniel Garcia and Private Party. And then Jon Moxley, who is dressed like he's either doing burglary or he's a theater stagehand. He's hiding in the shadows. I made this joke on Twitter. I think he was hiding at the sound desk, fucking up those video packages to make the company look incompetent. So who is the sacrifice? Who will be sacrificed to Jon Moxley this time? It's Chuck Taylor. They put a chair around his ankle, and I think it's an ankle injury that ended his career. But oh no, they're actually going to do his neck in instead. So they put the chair on his neck. Claudio stomps at it. Yuta's like shocked because Chuck trained Yuta, but they don't talk that up enough. Because Yuta, we still don't know why he chose to be with Mox's gang, but I choose my headcanon is it was one of those if you can't beat him, join him, and I'd rather be with these maniacs than against them type thing. So we have then Orange Cassidy comes down to see his poor friend Chuck Taylor, who he used to live with, as we were told earlier in the show. And this has left Orange heartbroken. So is this going to be what it takes for Orange Cassidy to step up and lead these baby faces? So many problems here, and some that we even still have to get to. But the front line against Moxley's gang at the minute are the grateful jobbers, the people that are so happy that they have a job, the Dark Order, people like Top Flight, Action Andretti, the kind of people who sadly to say that if I was asked to go through the roster and make some necessary cuts to free up some money, that would be out the door with like no further discussion needed. And Daniel Garcia, who everyone knows I love, he's like the current leader, but it's very telegraphed that we're waiting for Orange Cassidy to step up. And then most of us are thinking that the next person to step up will be Darby. So, Darby's going to be like playing Sting or whatever. So because we have these thoughts about Orange Cassidy and Darby Allin, Daniel Garcia is once again a little brother. He's trying to lead the resistance, but we need the real man to step up. That's kind of what we're being told. I totally get everyone saying like, look, you can't make everything about the Moxley angle. There are so many people in this company that are completely ignoring the Moxley thing is going on. So that's people like, firstly, Chris Jericho, who will have a match with Mark Briscoe, Hangman Page, Jay White, Swerve Strickland, MVP, who's conducting business in this company that's being taken over. He's just conducting his own business. MJF, Adam Cole. There's all these people. They are totally unaffected by it. And of course they are, because Hangman Page, Hangman Page, Jay White, MJF, Chris Jericho are not going to pick up pots and pans and stand outside an arena all night waiting for Big Bad Moxley. No, they're completely above that. So it just has to be these little jobbers that are out there looking like the seven dwarfs waiting. So we can't make everything about Moxley, but he should concern some better people. And I actually have an idea that I'll tell you during a match about how I could have integrated him here into the wider Dynamite show. But we should have some kind of acknowledgement. But also, this is why this stuff usually doesn't work. Usually it becomes like when the NWO stuff got really bad. And I started watching wrestling just before the NWO began. So I was there for all of the NWO angle, like watching at the time. And I was also watching wrestling when we had the Alliance and WWE shit. That's one that went really, really long. And that whole thing was about this war. But I just think this stuff is too hard to do. And I don't think the company right now is in the right position to be doing it, because we know that ratings are falling and the live attendance fall is actually, I believe, scarier than the ratings fall, right? Because it doesn't take much effort to turn on your TV to watch Dynamite, but it does take effort to go out to the shows on a Wednesday night. And people don't seem willing to make that effort, at least not at all in the numbers like they used to. So in real life, like the fan base of AEW aren't currently willing to rally around it right now. So it's then very hard to support wrestlers that you don't really care about trying to rally you around AEW. And it does feel like all they're fighting for is just AEW rather than any larger thing that draws them together. Like, what does Satnam Singh talk to John Silver about when they're sitting in a parking lot together all night? Do they just talk about how much they love AEW? Because what is banding these guys together? Because Moxley, he hasn't been clear about his aims and goals. But Moxley, Marina, Claudio, and Pac, at least, seem very banded together, right? They seem like they're probably having fun conversations in the car. They also, come across a lot cooler than the people defending AEW. No one can tell me that Marina Shafir is not cooler than any fucking member of the Dark Order or Action Andretti or Top Flight or Private Party or the friggin' Butcher who was out there, you know. Moxley, he feels like young wrestlers haven't stepped up enough, but the wrestler he took out was Bryan Danielson, who is a older wrestler, not the oldest, not old, but an older wrestler, and an ex-WWE wrestler, but his actual problem is with young wrestlers. And it's just very convoluted. I don't think it's hitting right. I think a lot of the stuff Moxley says about ways in which the company has gone downhill are actually true. That's why I think it wasn't a good time to do this storyline, because we're still feeling the effects of the MJF Adam Cole storyline. And I think even if you're someone that liked that storyline, I'm not, but if you are, that's well and good. But I don't think we can deny that it really hurt the company more than anything else. It really turned off their fan base. It's like an artist having a song that isn't that big a flop commercially, but it really, like, their core fan base, the people that loved them from the beginning, that were really invested in them, it turned them off, and it made them feel like, oh, this isn't the band that I liked. This isn't for me anymore. And they just jumped off. That MJF Adam Cole storyline, it hurt AEW a lot, and we've not rebuilt from it yet. So this just feels like a bad time to do this kind of rally around AEW angle. So I just find this stuff very frustrating. There's too many plot holes in the Moxley stuff. Maybe we're also waiting for Kenny. Said this before. I love Kenny. He's the wrestler I am most lucky to be on the planet at the same time as. I don't think his return will massively turn this around. And then I was listening to Wrestle Purists, and Ibu said that he heard that this Moxley thing is going to go in right into 2025. It's not ending at World's End. It's going to go into 2025. And there are more twists and turns coming up. And obviously here we're at the very initial stage, but I do wonder if people will just be turned off from it before we even get to these twists and turns and these other things that can happen. So yeah, I think that's all my thoughts on the Moxley stuff, to be honest. I want it to like it so much. And I think it's the stuff that Moxley says is very well written, and it's very well performed. And they've really found a place for Marina Shafir, who comes off really cool. I've never been that into Claudio, and even he's been very good in this. Pac is awesome. Wheeler Yuta, I'm still not sure about, like, them turning him, but it is what it is. There's a lot of things I want to like about it, but I do actually want to fight for AEW. Like, I want it to be really good, and I want it to be successful, and I want them to be hitting better ratings now, and I want their live attendance to go up and all this stuff. But I don't see this working in the way they want it to. There's just too many things to go wrong in it. So let's move on to the Mark Briscoe Chris Jericho match, because I have so many thoughts on it and I need to get them off my chest. So Mark Briscoe and Chris Jericho had a ladder war that happened on a Wednesday at 9 p.m. So Jericho won, right? Let's just go through the problems with this. I think that this storyline has been really fucking lazy. Like, really, really lazy. And I think that, firstly, I think that people, like, there's a lot of people that just don't like Jericho. They don't like him being on their TV, right? And I think because they're at that point with him where they just see him as turn off TV, that they almost do bad faith criticisms on him because they dislike him so much that they're unwilling, that they don't even want to analyze why something is bad. They just say it's bad because it involves Chris Jericho. And I don't like the learning tree stuff, but I feel like when I've talked about the learning tree, whether it be on here or when I did it a couple of times on my Twitter spaces, when I've talked about that, I do always say the actual reasons why it's bad or why it's not working, separate from like whether or not you like Chris Jericho, because there's obviously, you look on social media and there's a ton of people that just that don't like him. And sometimes I've even tried to come from the place of someone who, like, I don't consider myself a fan of his just because I wasn't a fan of him when he was in WWE or anything like that. But I even try to come from a place of like, what is this stuff? Like, is this stuff a negative for his legacy at this point in his life? And sometimes I think it is. And this particular feud with Mark Briscoe and this match, if the accusation against Jericho is that he just wants TV time, right? That he just plucks things out of thin air to put himself on TV and to ensure he always has a match and he always has a segment, then this is wonderful evidence for the prosecution. Because I need a Diet Coke sip. So Chris was feuding with Orange Cassidy, and then that ended. And then Orange Cassidy is friends with Mark Briscoe. And so Mark Briscoe is at this point, but was the Ring of Honor champion, which we know is a totally meaningless belt. Mark doesn't even come to Ring of Honor much. And he barely like mentions on Dynamite that he's Ring of Honor champion unless it feeds into the story, and it did here. So anyway, Jericho turns his attention one week out of the blue to Mark, and he's like, you're not as good as your dead brother, basically, Jay. You're not as good as Jay, right? He doesn't actually say anything. He's never said anything offensive about Jay Briscoe, so it's not like the weird Eddie Guerrero stuff they used to do. But anyway, he mentions Jay, Mark's brother. So it's like, oh my gosh, he went there. And then he gets a match with Mark at the pay-per-view because of this. He goaded him by mentioning Jay, and he loses that match. And then after the match at the pay-per-view, he does one of those backstage interviews with Renee that then airs days later on Dynamite. So it's a pre-tape where he's basically like, I lost, but you're still not as good as your brother Jay. And then Mark Briscoe hears this, and Mark's like annoyed that he mentioned Jay again. So Jericho automatically gets a rematch, right? That pre-tape bit was extremely lazy. And I can only speculate that it was done because Jericho couldn't come to Dynamite, because I think he was on a Fozzy tour, which there's a big problem with that, because that setup was so lazy that if you can't come to Dynamite because you have other commitments, then let's ice this until you're ready to give it your full commitment, okay? There's nothing wrong with having outside projects, whether you are in a band on tour or whether you're doing a movie with Adam Sandler. But if this outside stuff affects the wrestling product and makes you do lazy things in your main job of being a pro wrestler, then those weeks when it's just too much for you to come to Dynamite, like maybe we'll just put your stuff on ice, because he was able to come to this week's Dynamite, so we could have done more setup here. So the mentioning of I never supported the mentioning of Jay Briscoe. And I think because Jericho has no history with Jay Briscoe, it's not as if they had a match or anything like that. So when he says that you're not as good as Jay, like he actually doesn't know how good Jay was. Like he himself doesn't know that, didn't have that experience. Um, and I think that you can only do that once, right? And the thing about mentioning Jay's name, as opposed to when we hear Christian mention rando wrestler's dead dad, is like we actually like knew Jay Briscoe, right? We didn't know him; he wasn't our friend, but he's someone that we're very familiar with, and a lot of fans were very affected by his death. Um, it's like when Christian did the feud with Jack Perry, a lot of us grew up watching Luke Perry, so like we really got it. But then when Christian mentions another wrestler's dead dad, you're like, it's sad that wrestler's dad died, but I didn't actually know like who he was, you know. So it hasn't hit me at the level of someone that you know. But we all knew Jay Briscoe, right? So I really think they pissed away using this tragic event for any good kind of storyline beat or even heat or anything like that, by just one giving it to someone who has had no connection to the Briscoes, none that we the viewer know about, and two, doing a storyline that felt so completely rushed. Because has it even been a month since the first mentioning of Jay to we're at the point now where they had two matches? And then just to illustrate just how rushed and meaningless this is. Like it's completely meaningless. The Ring of Honor title meaningless. And sadly, the use of Jay Briscoe's name and passing is meaningless here. They had a ladder war. Now, the Briscoes were famous for their ladder matches. They had a ladder war at 9 p.m. on a Wednesday, right? Nothing brought us to the point where we needed a ladder war other than Jay being mentioned twice. But this clearly wasn't an important match because it didn't main event. And I know I said that on Twitter, and some people were like, it didn't need to main event. And a lot of people were like, I didn't want it to main event. But I do feel like you're only saying that because you don't like Chris Jericho. Put someone else in this position, and you would be like, yeah, a ladder war for a world title where someone's deceased brother is part of the storyline should probably main event a fucking Dynamite, if not be on pay-per-view. And then you have this match, which I thought was very good, and I thought their match at the pay-per-view was very good. But these two guys are out here doing spots like destroying each other. Mark Briscoe is bleeding. Jericho, who's like 54, 55 years old, is taking bumps. Like his initial bump was through a table. It's a ladder match, but you must take the first bump through the table in 2024, right? Because audiences nowadays, they hear ladder, like they see ladder match advertised, but they, in their brains, they hear TLC, right? Because you have to go with all the furniture. Jericho at one point takes a bump where his head totally lands on the ladder. And I'm just like, dude, what are you doing this for? This gave me vibes, unfortunately, of the time Cody Rhodes set himself on fire. Do you remember when Cody Rhodes set himself on fire? Because the fans were turning against Cody. So Cody set himself on fire in a match, which I think was against Andrade. Now I can't even remember. But Cody set himself on fire to make people love him. Like that's actually what happened there. And that was during like that bad Cody period. And then, you know, he's the man now, but love you, Pharaoh. But this gave me vibes of Cody setting himself on fire because I was like, frankly, like this is really desperate. Like, I think sometimes because Jericho gets so much backlash, he like tries too hard in certain matches, like just tries too hard. Like, there is no need for you to be having a ladder match on a Wednesday at 9 p.m. where you're hitting your head on a ladder, you're going through a table, you're taking bumps off a ladder. Like, there's no need that you at this stage have to do that to prove yourself. But I guess you feel like you have to do it because there's online backlash against you being on TV, and also you're in this feud with Mark Briscoe where you mentioned Jay's name. And like, all of it was just, it was rushed, it was unearned. There was no care taken on this storyline at all. There was no creativity in this storyline. There was no art to this storyline. It wasn't even like, there was no fucking intelligence put into this storyline to give you anything to make this match worth it. So this match was number 2. So I guess they're going to have another match at some point, probably at Full Gear. But hey, maybe they'll throw a bone to Ring of Honor and put Jericho in the Ring of Honor pay-per-view, which I don't even think is going to make that any better. And then, we've gone through all this stuff, this amazing 4 weeks of build or whatever it was of this whole feud. And Jericho wins the belt, which a world title or a company's main title changed hands and no one gives a fuck, right? I don't know if they're trying to shop Ring of Honor and like that's why Jericho's champion again, even though it didn't work the first time. But this is the biggest indictment of Ring of Honor. Nobody gave a fuck that this title changed hands. Like, nobody cared. It wasn't even like a big point of discourse after the show. The only discourse you get from it is people are annoyed that Chris Jericho beat Mark Briscoe. If you were on Reddit last night during Dynamite, it's like every match, every segment was getting under 40 comments on Reddit. Chris Jericho versus Mark Briscoe, over 200 comments on that thread. But it's nothing to do with the storyline, nothing to do with the booking, nothing, no like heat that you can actually translate into ticket sales. It's just people are pissed that Jericho won a match and he won a title and he beat someone that people think is a genuinely good person because like they're mad at the TV time that Tony Khan gives Chris Jericho, that Chris Jericho doesn't hold Tony Khan hostage, by the way. Tony gives this to Chris. So this isn't even translatable heat. I'm just getting worked up, but this thing really fucking annoyed me. So anyway, it ends. So this heel who invoked a dead brother's name, who wins basically like by cheating because his goons run in. Oh, and by the way, the only friend of Mark Briscoe that would help is Rocky Romero. But Jericho's goons help him. Big Bill literally carries him to get the title. Match ends. We don't even get to take in what has just happened. Poor Mark Briscoe has lost the title that his brother once held, that he had to find it within himself as now not part of the Briscoes, but the solo Briscoe to go and win. He's just lost that. That's over. And fucking Ishii comes out. And like, no disrespect to Ishii, but the person that's actually disrespecting Ishii is Tony Khan, because he books Ishii to lose every time he's on AEW TV. Chris Jericho beat Ishii nearly exactly 2 years ago on Dynamite. Why would he give a fuck that Ishii's come out? And nobody does, because Ishii is not a threat. Ishii's not going to win the Ring of Honor title. If he does, it would be bloody stupid because he's only been booked as a loser. And Ishii's a great wrestler, but he's a victim of extremely bad booking. Nobody could possibly care about this man coming out. It was nonsensical. It was stupid. It took away from 1, Jericho's victory, and 2, the loss that Mark Briscoe went through. And if Ishii was watching, why at no point did he not come out to help his little conglomeration buddy, Mark Briscoe? Who knows, right? So my idea for how this could have gone in order to like tie some of this Moxie shit up, what I honestly would have done is at the beginning of this show, Moxley said something about someone's life changing for the worse on this Dynamite. Literally, I would have had the Moxley crew disrupt this match and just take out Mark Briscoe, because Mark Briscoe is an enemy of he's made himself an enemy of the Moxley gang because he helped Bryan Danielson, right? Mark is on the front line. They could have taken him out. Sorry, I'm coughing. I was so angry. They should have just taken out Mark Briscoe in this match, because if they want to be disruptors, they need to be disrupting more often. Take Mark Briscoe out. Moxley could have done something like climbed up the ladder, grabbed the Ring of Honor title, and just fucking threw it on Jericho, right? So then you're left going like, wow, if you mess with Moxley like Mark Briscoe did, if you insert yourself in this, he's going to fuck things up for you. And then it would also lead us to the question of, now, does Moxley like the learning tree? Does he like Jericho? Does he have some respect there? Or does he just hate Mark Briscoe so much that he was like, yeah, he can have this worthless title as long as it's not you? And that would have been an acknowledgement of the Moxley stuff going on in the wider universe. And then when you see the Babyface Brigade later in the night, they are a man down. Like, they are down Mark Briscoe, who at the beginning of the show was showing front and center. And they are down a man, not because of the actions of one Jon Moxley and his gang, but because a totally different heel faction took him out in this match. Like, that's where the no logic to the Moxley storyline comes in. But I know that was a lot of ranting, but I really didn't like the Jericho Briscoe storyline and how it was done. And I actually do think it was quite, at the end of the day, it was quite disrespectful because it was so lazy and rushed. And these are the questions, like, you know, they tell you to, when you're writing things, to always think about the who, what, when, where, why, right? So if you're Tony Khan, and whoever thought of this, mentioning Jay Briscoe, right? Maybe it was Chris Jericho, maybe it was Jimmy Jacobs, or maybe it was Mark Briscoe himself. If you're Tony Khan and that idea is brought to you, you need to be asking some of those questions, because this was just, the whole thing was so rushed. I'm sure it's not over. Does anyone want Mark Briscoe to be Ring of Honor champion again? Probably not, okay? Ring of Honor at this point exists only to hold Athena hostage. And I really, you can watch on my channel, I interviewed Athena not long ago, and I did ask her about the fact that she doesn't appear on Dynamite, that she has resigned to Ring of Honor. And the answer that she gave me was really good, right? And she seemed like she was happy, but you never really know how someone feels when you're interviewing them. And she kind of turned me around a little bit, because I was like, okay, she does get to be Queen Bee there. And frankly, she probably wouldn't get that on AEW TV if we look at the women that rise to the top of the division and get to be on Dynamite. But like, we're at the point now where Athena is really being held away from us on Ring of Honor. So I don't know, if Jericho wants to do some good, maybe like when he turns up to Ring of Honor TV, he can rescue Athena and bring her to Dynamite for us, because that Ring of Honor is just the place where she's held captive right now. Okay. I think the next thing I'll talk about just really quickly was this Kyle Fletcher segment. I didn't like this either. This, to me, felt like it went on for hours. I would love to know, like, the actual runtime of this. But I thought it was another example of the way Tony sometimes sends his young guys out to just drown, like to do something they're not ready for. I think Kyle has improved tremendously as a promo, but he could not carry this length of a talking segment. And the fans were telling him to shut the fuck up, and he took it really, really well. Like he had quips, but it was too long. And this often happens with the younger guys that aren't great talkers. I think that was best demonstrated during like that awful Four Pillars feud where like only MJF could talk. And don't get me started at the times Hook has been asked to talk when it's not been a good idea, or even Jack Perry. But this was ridiculously long. Don Callis was with him, and usually I'd say thank God that Don can't speak, but that Don didn't speak, but he could have probably carried some of this load, or because Don Callis, does help backstage and he's certainly involved here. Maybe he should have said, I don't think Kyle can do this much, like all at once. So I thought this just went on too long. And I'm sitting there being like, this is lasting forever, and I hope there's a payoff. And then this guy gets a razor and shaves his head in the middle of the ring. Like, this guy shaved his head on live TV after talking, like after putting people to sleep with his talking. He then gets a razor out and shaves his head. And I do support that, because he has been looking like, when we were all really worried about Justin Bieber the first time, that's kind of the look that Kyle Fletcher adopted. But this was just really weird. And I do think, like, all sympathy in the world to Kyle Fletcher, who hasn't done promos like this before, but it was too much all at once. And then when he shaved his head, like, I just started laughing because I could not believe that he was shaving his head on live TV after all of that. It was so bizarre. So just a really, really weird segment. And I think that, like, I don't want to sound like I'm blaming too much on Don Callis, but obviously, like, Don Callis is a bit of a wrestling mind, right? And he needs to serve some function. So it would be nice if, like, creatively, he brought some of these ideas, or asked some questions like, why is my guy out here talking for like 30 minutes before shaving his head? It was like, just really, like, do you think it would have been more impactful if he just said, I don't want to be anything like Will Ospreay. I'm nothing like Will Ospreay, and I'll show you, and just shaved his head, and that was it. I think that might have been more impactful. And one of the first segment of the show was between Hangman Page and Jay White. And I have to say that even though these are my two favorite men in the entire world, by the time this show ended, I had no recollection of this segment at all. But the Hangman and Jay feud is continuing. It's continuing because they know I'm going to be at Full Gear, and they know I have to see these guys wrestle live. So that's what we're getting. From my memory, this segment was fine, but it just, I think maybe it's because, like, the Moxley stuff was so overpowering, and then the Jericho stuff was so anger-inducing, that the stuff that was completely out of, like, the Moxley universe on this show, I thought was quite hard to remember. So anyway, that's continuing. We had Shelton Benjamin defeating Sammy Guevara. This was a great match. They're doing wonders with Shelton Benjamin. He's been great so far. But I just do wish that this wasn't happening when all the Moxley stuff was happening. I think that there was this idea when we all knew that MVP was coming in, that where we were all like so waiting for Bobby Lashley, like Bobby Lashley is going to be the guy. And Shelton is doing a really good job of being like, hey, don't overlook me. His matches have been great so far. I do want to point out, though, that I don't want to shit too much on Sammy Guevara, but only because I did see him and Ty in London, and they seem like a lovely young couple. But Sammy Guevara needs to leave. He is it's never going to happen, right? You're never making Fetch happen. You're never making Sammy Guevara happen. We're 5 years in. He would be really great with the change of scenery. So It's the time has passed. But before this match, they show a video where Sammy Guevara is talking, and Sammy Guevara has been in AEW since day one. He had the first ever Dynamite match. But when Sammy Guevara has to be a face and talk about his career, he has to like lie because he can never mention all the times that he was Chris Jericho's illegitimate son. So he always has to pretend that he's like this hard worker, which I'm sure he is in real life, but like in kayfabe, he's not. But he's like, I love AEW because I met my wife here and now I have a baby. And that is so typical of people that have been there from the beginning and done nothing. And this guy is a former TNT champion, but for some reason with Sammy, it's like it all gets washed away. All his achievements always get washed away because they can never sustain anything with him. So if you're out there and like the most you can say for yourself after 5 years in a wrestling company is I'm glad I work for this company because I met my wife, I think that's an indictment of everyone. So anyway, him and Ty, lovely couple, but you know, it's just not good. But Shelton looked awesome. MVP. Later in the show, he gave his card to Ricochet. I love what MVP is doing. I love MVP. MVP is like an intelligent, handsome, and likable Don Callis. It's a joke. He's nothing like Don Callis. But yeah, I like this stuff that MVP is doing. Okay, what the fuck else happened on this show? Oh my God. Adam Cole. Adam Cole and the Undisputed Kingdom are friends. Will this ever end? We got this video of MJF, right? And basically he was about to get a hand job because MJF, like as soon as you saw that MJF was on a massage table, you knew that, you know, he was going to get wanked off, right? Because he can't possibly not say that when he's on a massage table. Like he literally just picked that so he could make that joke because he's so obvious. So MJF was like, I'm never going to give you the satisfaction of fighting me. And then 5 seconds later, he was like, well, actually, you and Lottie should do a best of 3 series, and whoever gets to 3 first can have a match with me. So that was easy, I guess. So Roddy and Adam Cole are going to do that. And then randomly, Buddy Matthews was mad at Adam Cole and challenged him. So that's going to be Adam's first match, I guess. And I guess we're going to get Adam versus Roddy as like the decider, I think, probably. Could not care less about the Adam Cole MJF thing. It's just very, why are we doing this? Why are the Undisputed Kingdom there? Has Wardlow not come back from his FIG run yet? I don't know. Just, it's turn off TV. And MJF is like, everything is so obvious, right? Everything is just so obvious. Okay, Jamie Hayter finally got to speak. Jamie Hayter was absolutely great here. Jamie Hayter does work incredibly hard. I worked with Jamie Hayter once during COVID, and everything she's saying is fucking true. They've booked her so badly since she's come back. She always needed this time to speak on TV. She should have never been stuck with Saraya, but her next feud is Penelope Ford. Who could possibly care about Penelope Ford? Penelope Ford is angry because Penelope Ford was gone for 2 years and nobody cares. My camera's about to go off. I will change battery. But nobody cares about Penelope Ford coming back. But like, honestly, it seems like nobody cares that Jamie Hayter came back because she's been resigned to the B shows since she came back. So the premise of this feud is very stupid, but it was very cool to finally hear Jamie Hayter talk on TV. House of Black had a match. We cannot pretend to care. Queen Aminata was defeated by Camille. I have to be kind of cruel on this match. I will fix my camera. This match absolutely sucked. And I really love Queen Aminata, and I've always been asking for her to get more TV time or like move up the card. So I think that Camille was to blame for this. Camille is obviously physically very imposing, though not as much as she could be if Mercedes Moné would allow her to be very, very tall next to her. But these two had zero chemistry together, and sometimes two wrestlers just have no chemistry, and this was a great example of it. They were falling over each other, and I think that Camille doesn't have this skill set to get in the ring with someone who's pretty green, but she also just can't have any chemistry or connect with. I thought this match was really messy, absolutely the worst outing I've seen from Queen Aminata. Camille is honestly not much of a worker, but she has a purpose to serve. And yeah, I thought this was really disappointing. Chris Statlander came out in the end, and they've really done a number on Chris Statlander with this stupid face turn, because she was just so great as a heel, and then they turned her face for no reason. It made a lot of people angry, and then she had to pretend that she was like led down a bad path, even though she beat Willow in their feud, and she had like a fucking awesome hardcore match. It was this like amazing women's match that happened after a truly incredible match between two men that people thought that no one could beat, or like that the women were in a death spot, and then these two just showed everyone that no, we can do it. But they just did not capitalize on that, and I think that Chris would be in a much better place if they just kept her a heel. But they needed opponents for Mercedes that can actually work, and there's not enough of them. So they had to turn her face, and it was all really messy. And now we're going to get Chris Statlander versus Camille, and I don't think that's going to be a good match based on what we saw here. I just don't. So, yeah, not too happy about that. And look, my face is back. The lighting tonight is even worse than usual. It's giving me no eyebrows, and I do currently have eyebrows. So this wasn't good. This wasn't good. Oh, okay. I think this is the last thing I have to talk about. It is Hook, right? So, do you remember when Hook, a genius, had the idea that he would stand backstage and wait for the person who attacked his father to appear? You might remember that that happened the week before the pay-per-view. Poor little Hook, he was just standing there waiting for the person to appear, and nobody went up and confessed to him. So he was left there, and eventually he had to walk home. So anyway, at some point, I guess during the last week, some genius came up to Hook and was like, hey, dude, instead of just waiting for your dad's attacker to tell you that they attacked your father, why don't you look at the security camera footage? And Hook saw the security camera footage. So we were going to find out tonight that who attacked Taz, because Hook has seen the footage. So Hook arrives, and even though this was advertised as a segment, Renee runs up to him and she's like, Hook, who attacked your dad? And Hook was like, stop trying to get scoops from me, Renee. I'm going to say it in the ring. So he goes to the ring to tell us who attacked his father. And then we get Christian and his gang, who are then saved by Kip Sabian. So Kip Sabian, who's been following Christian around all this time, is actually aligned with Christian. He saves them, and Christian is like, goes down in the corner, and who gets taken out? Christian says the iconic line to Kip Sabian, I know why you stole my pen. So now the mystery of who attacked Hook's dad, Taz, I guess has been solved. I guess it was Christian or Kip Sabian, one of these guys. We're going to move on to the mystery of why did Kip Sabian steal Christian's pen? That's going to be amazing. Yeah, maybe there'll be some like therapy session tapes there. They are running out of people with deceased fathers in this company And we know that because they're using Kip Sabian, okay? Now, I don't know. Maybe Tony Khan will watch this brilliant video and he'll give me a job and I can be the person that Christian comes at next. But you just know that we are running out of Dead Dad Club members if Kip Sabian is getting a spot in all of this. That was AEW Dynamite. Okay. If you have any questions, let me know before I sign off. I felt like that was therapy. I had a lot to say about the show. The show really made me angry. Okay, Mo says, what a fever dream of a show. That makes me think of the fact of I had a dream last night after this Dynamite, after watching this Dynamite that got me so mentally worked up. And this is, so I dreamt that I was friends with Chris Statlander, which gave me permission from Tony Khan to be backstage at AEW. And then I was approached backstage at AEW by Renee, who asked me if I wanted trading to be a commentator. And she was like, what's your contract like? And I said, I'm actually not under contract. Tony just allows me to be here because I know Statlander. And then Sean O'Hare appeared in Kiss makeup. Yes, Sean O'Hare, rest in peace, appeared in Kiss makeup. And that was the dream I had last night. So this Dynamite drove me so insane in the brain and broke my brain so much that's what came out of my those were my sleeping thoughts. So anyway, that was the dream I had last night. It was I feel really bad when I really hate a show and I come on here and talk to you all, especially when I see like when I see like Fernando say that he loved Dynamite last night, and Maria call it an A+ Dynamite, and John, saying that it was a good show overall, and it makes me feel really bad for hating it so much. So, like, special thanks to everyone who really liked the show and yet stuck around to hear me rip it to shreds. But I just felt strongly about it, and I do always try and be honest. And I think that I'm really trying to critique the Moxley stuff in the best way that I can. And I really hope that nothing I say comes across as bad faith criticism, because I did go in very hard on Chris Jericho and Mark Briscoe, but that was me really trying to do it in good faith, because like I've said before, I hear too many people just dismissing everything Jericho does because they don't like him, but they don't talk about why it's bad. And I think you need to like have a more honest discussion about like the creative and why something's bad, or like why you don't like it, rather than just whatever else you think. And yeah, but it was a whirlwind. What do we have coming up? I hope I have an interview coming up soon. I had a great development on the interview front today, that if it was to happen would be extremely exciting. And I know all of you guys in the chat would be very thrilled and would 100% watch it. Okay, next week is Halloween week. Woo, spooky. So, you know that every month I do my Ask Steph live Q&A. And now I'm just looking at my calendar and I'm like, oh shit, when is the best time for me to do Ask Steph? So I think I'm gonna do it on Wednesday, October 30th, and I'm gonna do it daytime, right? So watch out for the link on that. If you haven't watched before, that's just a show where you can ask me anything about anything, but most people ask me about wrestling. But I just take questions for an hour. Free questions. They don't have to be super chats or anything like that. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone that watched. I'll be reviewing Dynamite next week, even if it's not good, but I really hope it's good because I want this show to go back to being good. I'm not tweeting much at the minute or Xing much at the minute because I just hate the platform. Like, I genuinely hate the platform. So I'll try and post more on YouTube. And I'm going to be using my Substack more as well because I like that. I haven't really been able to get into Threads, but I'm just like, I don't like X. I don't like X. And it's a lot to take in, especially like during election time. It's just a lot. So updates though, I'll always try and post them on YouTube. Maria says, how did I get the monthly prediction stream for Fightful? Did you approach them or did they approach you? Sean approached me. I'm good friends with Sean. Sean Wassap is one of the people in the industry that's been the nicest to me. He's definitely someone that I'll always appreciate, for the kindness he's shown me and the opportunities he's given me. So Sean gave me that job. We have a super chat. Thank you for Mo Esquire, who sends $5. Another great show. I loved Forged in Excellence. Could you share your thoughts on Scott D'Amore and the future of his promotion? I will when I watch it. I haven't watched it yet. I'm intrigued to watch it, but I haven't watched it yet. I've heard really good things about it. Obviously, Takeshita was on it. Love him. It's a Canadian promotion. I'm currently in Canada, so I'm intrigued even more. But I haven't watched it, but I will. I'll try and watch it before I do Ask Steph, right? So maybe I'll either remember to tell you my thoughts or you can ask me again then when hopefully I'll watch it. Fernando asks, do you have any big interviews lined up soon? Maybe. As I said, there's one that could be on the horizon that would be super exciting for us. Super exciting over here on the channel. Okay, guys, I'm off. Yeah. Keep enjoying Dynamite. Keep enjoying AEW. But I really do appreciate everyone that watched me to rant. I nearly pushed Benno into jumping on the stream with me, but unfortunately it's like 2 or 3 a.m. for him. So he wasn't down to do that. But I asked him because I felt so strongly about this show that even though I love doing these shows by myself, I was like, I'm going to come across like a crazy ranting woman if I do this alone. But anyway, I pushed through and I did it alone. And I was a crazy ranting woman and you still watched. So that's amazing. I'll catch you next time. Bye.